The moment I realized my family no longer wanted me, it wasn't during an argument. It was when I noticed my chair had disappeared from the Thanksgiving table. I stood in the driveway for a few seconds longer than usual that night, staring at the warm yellow lights glowing through Michael's front windows while cold November wind brushed against my coat. Every Thanksgiving for the past 12 years had been held in this house in Columbus, Ohio. The same turkey recipe, the same crowded kitchen, the same football game humming from the living room television. And every year my grandson Noah would be the first one through the door to hug me. Some traditions make you feel safe. Others only make you blind. I picked up the pecan pie from the passenger seat and walked slowly to the porch, already smelling roasted turkey and cinnamon through the screen door. Before I could knock, the door flew open. "Grandma!" Noah wrapped his arms around my waist so tightly I almost lost my balance. At 10 years old, he still hugged me like I was his favorite person in the world. "Hey there, sweetheart." I laughed softly, kissing the top of his head. "You getting taller every time I see you? Mom says I grew almost 2 inches since summer." "Well, at this rate you'll be playing for the Buckeyes before middle school." He grinned proudly and grabbed my pie dish carefully with both hands. Behind him, the house looked beautiful. Orange candles flickered across the dining room. The kitchen counters were crowded with casseroles and dinner rolls. But something felt strange almost immediately. Jennifer barely looked up from the kitchen island when I walked in. "Oh good, you made it," she said flatly while wiping her hands with a dish towel. No hug. No smile. Michael appeared from the hallway a second later, forcing a quick nod instead of his usual embrace. "Hey Mom." His voice sounded distracted, nervous almost. "Traffic okay?" "Not too bad," I answered quietly. "About 40 minutes. He shoved his hands into his pockets and glanced toward Jennifer before walking away again. That was the first moment my stomach tightened. Families speak in silence long before they speak out loud. I removed my coat slowly and looked toward the dining table. My eyes stopped immediately. Everyone's place setting was there except mine. The seat I had used every Thanksgiving since Michael bought this house was gone entirely, replaced by a decorative cart holding extra dishes and folded napkins. Jennifer noticed me staring. "Oh," she said quickly, almost laughing. "We just needed more room this year." I smiled politely, but something inside me went cold. I told myself I was imagining things. Families change over time. Kids grow up. Houses get rearranged. Maybe Jennifer really did need extra room for the food. Maybe Michael was stressed from hosting everyone this year. But deep down, I already knew that cold feeling in my chest was not coming from the weather outside. It was coming from this house. Noah tugged gently on my sweater sleeve. "Grandma, come see the dessert table. Mom let me put the whipped cream on the pumpkin pie." His smile was so proud that I forced myself to smile back. "Then I better inspect your work," I said softly. He led me toward the kitchen while relatives filled the living room with shallow laughter and the sound of clinking glasses. Michael's older brother Greg sat on the couch watching football while barely acknowledging me. His wife Diane gave me one of those tight little smiles people use when they know something uncomfortable and do not want to be involved. Even my sister Carol avoided eye contact after hugging me hello. The entire room felt rehearsed somehow, like everyone had agreed on something before I arrived. Jennifer moved through the kitchen carrying serving trays with dramatic energy, laughing louder than necessary every time someone complimented the food. "I swear," she said while placing sweet potatoes onto the counter, "hosting gets harder every year. At some point people just need their own space, you know?" A few relatives chuckled awkwardly. I noticed Michael immediately stare down into his drink. Noah leaned closer to me and whispered, "Dad has been acting weird all week." Before I could ask what he meant, Jennifer suddenly turned toward him. "Noah, honey, can you grab Grandma's coat from the hallway?" "Sure," he said. Happily, he disappeared around the corner while I reached for a dinner plate. Then I heard his small voice from the front hallway. "Grandma." Something in his tone made my hands stop moving. "Grandma, are you going somewhere?" The room became strangely quiet behind me. I walked slowly toward the hallway, hearing my own heartbeat louder with every step. Noah stood near the front door holding my coat in one hand. Beside him were 2 large navy blue suitcases. My suitcases, the same ones I used last Christmas when I visited my cousin in Arizona. They were fully packed and sitting neatly beside the door like someone had prepared them hours ago. One of my sweaters was folded carefully across the top handle. Even my medication bag sat zipped beside them. Noah looked confused. "I thought maybe you were taking a trip," he said quietly. I could not speak for a moment. My eyes lifted slowly toward the dining room. Jennifer froze beside the table. Michael looked pale. And suddenly every strange moment from the evening no longer felt accidental. For a few seconds nobody moved. The football game still played softly in the living room. Silverware clinked somewhere near the kitchen. But standing there in that hallway beside my packed suitcases, I felt something inside me settle into a terrible kind of clarity. Jennifer was the first to speak. "Evelyn," she said carefully, walking toward me with her hands folded together, "maybe we should talk privately." Noah looked back and forth between us. "Why are Grandma's things packed?" he asked again. Michael rubbed his forehead hard like he already had a headache. "Buddy, why do not you go help Uncle Greg with the drinks for a minute?" "But, please, Noah." His voice came out sharper than he intended. Noah looked wounded by the tone, but he slowly walked away toward the kitchen, still glancing over his shoulder at me. The moment he disappeared, Jennifer lowered her polite expression completely. "We did not want this to happen in front of everyone," she said quietly. "Then why did it?" I asked. My voice surprised even me. Calm, steady, almost cold. Michael would not look at me. He kept staring at the hardwood floor while Jennifer answered instead. "We have been trying to figure out the best arrangement for months." Arrangement. Funny how cruel people become when they replace honesty with polite little words. "What arrangement?" I asked. Jennifer exhaled dramatically. "Evelyn, you have been staying here almost 2 years since Richard passed away. Noah is getting older. Michael works from home now. We need space." I blinked slowly. "So you packed my bags before telling me?" "We found a lovely senior apartment community in Westerville," she continued quickly, like she had rehearsed the speech. "They have walking trails, group dinners, transportation services." "Jennifer," I interrupted softly, "did you really think the brochures would make this less humiliating?" Her face tightened immediately. "That is not fair." Michael finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "Mom, we were going to explain everything after dinner." I stared at my son, the same boy I once worked double shifts to feed after his father lost his first job. The same boy whose college tuition I helped pay by cashing out part of my retirement savings. "After dinner," I repeated quietly. "So everyone could eat pie first?" His jaw tightened with guilt, but he still said nothing. That silence hurt more than anything Jennifer could have said. Behind us, I could hear relatives pretending not to listen while listening to every word. The smell of turkey and cinnamon suddenly made me nauseous. Jennifer crossed her arms. "We just think it is time for everyone to move forward." I looked down at the suitcases again. Someone had packed my favorite blue sweater right on top, folded neatly, carefully, like they were sending away a guest after a holiday weekend instead of removing a mother from her own family. Jennifer straightened the sleeves of her sweater and lowered her voice, trying to sound reasonable again. "Evelyn, nobody wants to fight tonight. It is Thanksgiving." I almost laughed at that. Thanksgiving. The holiday where families talked about gratitude, while quietly removing one another from their lives between dinner and dessert. I looked past her toward the dining room table. Candles flickered softly beside polished wine glasses. Someone had already poured cider into crystal cups. Everything looked warm enough for a holiday commercial, but none of it felt warm anymore. My sister Carol suddenly stepped closer, avoiding my eyes. "Maybe everybody should just sit down and eat before things get more emotional." Emotional. Another polite word people use when they do not want to admit someone is being treated badly. Michael nodded quickly. "Yeah, Mom, please. Let us just have dinner first." I stared at him for several seconds. "Did you know they packed my bags before I arrived?" His face tightened immediately. "Mom, that is not an answer." Jennifer crossed her arms again. Michael did not want this to be ugly. Then he should have spoken before my belongings were left by the front door like a charity donation. The room went silent again. Even the relatives pretending not to listen had stopped moving completely. I could feel every eye in the house carefully avoiding mine. Noah slowly wandered back into the hallway holding a tray of napkins against his chest. "Grandma?" he asked quietly. "Are you staying for dinner?" Before I could answer, Jennifer smiled too brightly at him. "Of course she is, sweetheart. We are all going to have a nice family Thanksgiving." The way she emphasized family made my stomach twist. Noah looked relieved for about 2 seconds before his eyes drifted back toward the suitcases. Children notice what adults try to hide. Michael cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mom, maybe after the holidays we can help you settle into the apartment. It really is nice." I looked at him slowly. "You already signed papers?" His silence answered me before his mouth did. Jennifer jumped in quickly. "We put down a deposit to hold the unit because these places fill up fast." "How thoughtful," I said softly. "You planned my future before asking whether I wanted one." Jennifer's polite expression cracked for the first time that night. "Evelyn, this house is crowded. Noah needs his own space eventually. Michael needs an office. We are trying to move forward with our lives." There it was at last. Not concern. Not care. Convenience. I suddenly realized something painful. Nobody here was shocked by any of this except me and Noah. The missing chair. The strange smiles. The nervous silence. They all knew. Every single person sitting in that dining room had arrived tonight already aware that I was being removed from this family like old furniture nobody wanted anymore. Noah looked around the room with the confused expression only children have when they realize adults are lying without actually saying the words out loud. He slowly placed the napkins back onto the hallway table and walked toward me again. "Grandma," he whispered carefully, "did you know about this?" Before I could answer, Jennifer stepped forward too quickly. "Sweetheart, this is a grown-up conversation." "But why are her bags packed?" he asked. His voice cracked slightly this time. Nobody answered him. Michael rubbed his face with both hands like he wanted the entire night to disappear. Finally he sighed. "Noah, Grandma is probably going to move into a different place soon." "Why?" The question hit the room harder than any accusation could have. Children force people to hear the truth because they do not know how to politely avoid it. Jennifer forced another smile. "Because sometimes families need changes." Noah frowned immediately. "But Grandma lives here." Jennifer's patience visibly thinned. "Not exactly." I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice calm. "Noah, honey, why do not you go sit down for dinner?" "I do not want dinner." His eyes stayed locked on the suitcases. "Did somebody tell you to leave?" The silence after that question felt endless. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it again. Jennifer looked irritated now, not uncomfortable. Irritated. Like the only problem tonight was that the child had noticed too much. "Nobody is throwing anyone out," she said sharply. Noah looked directly at me instead of her. "Then why are your clothes packed?" I saw tears beginning to form in his eyes, and suddenly my own heartbreak became secondary. Because until that moment I had still been trying to protect Michael in my mind. Trying to believe he was overwhelmed, confused, pressured. But watching my grandson stand there frightened and embarrassed while his parents avoided the truth finally. Stripped away every excuse I had been making for them. My sister Carol quietly slipped into the dining room. Greg turned the television volume lower without saying anything. Nobody wanted to intervene. They only wanted the discomfort to end. Jennifer crossed her arms tighter. "This is exactly why we wanted to handle this privately." "Privately?" I repeated softly. "You packed my life into 2 suitcases before Thanksgiving dinner." Michael finally stepped toward me, lowering his voice. "Mom, please. Can we just get through tonight peacefully?" Peacefully. Another convenient word. I looked around the beautiful house I had once helped furnish after Michael and Jennifer got married. I remembered buying the dining room chandelier as a wedding gift. I remembered painting Noah's nursery pale blue before he was born. I remembered paying 3 mortgage payments during the recession when Michael nearly lost the house. Suddenly I realized something almost funny. They spoke to me tonight like I was a burden who had wandered into their lives by accident. But every corner of this home still carried pieces of my sacrifice. I should have walked out right then. Pride alone should have carried me straight to my car. But humiliation does strange things to people. Sometimes it freezes you in place because your heart cannot catch up with what your eyes are seeing. Jennifer smoothed invisible wrinkles from the front of her blouse and glanced toward the dining room. "The turkey is getting cold," she said quietly, as if that mattered more than anything else happening in the house. Then she looked directly at me. "We can finish discussing everything later." I stared at her for a long moment. "No," I said softly. "I think we should discuss it now." Michael shifted uncomfortably beside the hallway table. "Mom, please do not make a scene." That sentence settled into me harder than the suitcases had. Not once that night had my son said what they were doing was wrong. His only concern was whether it looked uncomfortable in front of other people. Noah stepped closer until he was standing beside me again. I felt his small hand slide into mine. "Grandma can stay in my room," he said suddenly. The innocence in his voice nearly broke me. Jennifer let out a short breath through her nose. "Noah, enough. But she does not have anywhere to go tonight." Michael finally crouched slightly to face him. "Buddy, Grandma is going to be fine. We already helped arrange a place for her." Noah looked confused. "Without asking her?" Nobody answered. His eyes slowly moved around the room, realizing the adults had all participated in something ugly together. And children never forget the first time they see that happen. Jennifer finally lost the sweetness in her voice entirely. "Evelyn, we have been trying to move forward for a long time now. This arrangement was never supposed to be permanent." Arrangement again. Not family. Not home. Arrangement. I nodded slowly, letting her continue. "Michael needs an office upstairs. Noah's getting older. And honestly," she hesitated only a second, "the house feels crowded." Crowded. I looked around the wide entryway with vaulted ceilings and expensive hardwood floors. 4 bedrooms. 3 bathrooms. A finished basement. Nearly 3,000 square feet. Crowded was an interesting word for a home that once sat half empty while I quietly covered electric bills during difficult years they rarely even remembered anymore. "I see," I said calmly. Jennifer folded her arms tighter, mistaking my calmness for surrender. "We found a really nice senior community. There are social activities, transportation, even yoga classes." "That is very thoughtful. We are trying to do what is best for everyone." Everyone. Another careful little word designed to erase one person specifically. Michael finally looked at me directly for the first time all evening. His eyes carried guilt, exhaustion, embarrassment. But not courage. Never courage. And in that moment, standing beside my packed luggage while relatives waited quietly for Thanksgiving dinner to continue, I realized something painful. They truly believed they held all the power tonight. The strangest part about betrayal is how ordinary everything around it looks. The candles still glowed softly on the dining room table. Somebody laughed nervously in the kitchen. Outside the front windows, snow had started drifting lightly across the street. The world kept moving while mine quietly cracked apart in the middle of a holiday gathering. Jennifer glanced toward the oven clock and sighed impatiently. "Can we please sit down now?" she asked. "Everybody is uncomfortable." I almost smiled at that. Not because it was funny, but because discomfort was finally reaching the people who created it. Noah still stood beside me, holding my hand tightly. "Grandma does not even have her coat on," he said softly. Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Noah, what?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Why is everybody acting weird?" Michael looked exhausted now. "Buddy, enough questions." "No," Noah replied quietly, surprising all of us. "Nobody is answering me." The room fell silent again. I watched Jennifer carefully. Her patience was disappearing piece by piece because the situation was no longer happening privately behind closed doors. Now the truth was sitting in the hallway for everyone to see beside 2 packed suitcases. She folded her arms and finally dropped the fake politeness completely. "Fine," she said sharply. "You want answers? We have been trying to do this the respectful way for months." Michael immediately looked nervous. "Jennifer." "No, Michael. I am tired of pretending this situation is working." She turned toward me. "The truth is this house has revolved around your grief for almost 2 years." That sentence hit harder than I expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was rehearsed. She had practiced saying it before tonight. "Jennifer," I said quietly, "Richard was my husband for 43 years. And we were sympathetic," she replied quickly. "But eventually people have to move on." Move on. As if grief had an expiration date she could schedule on a calendar. Noah stared at his mother like he no longer recognized her voice. Mom! You do not understand because you are a child, she snapped before softening her tone again. Adults have responsibilities. Michael remained completely silent beside her. That silence finally became louder than Jennifer's words. I looked at my son and realized something deeply painful. He was not trapped in this situation. He had chosen it. Maybe not enthusiastically, maybe not bravely, but quietly. And quiet betrayal still leaves scars. Jennifer gestured vaguely toward the upstairs hallway. Noah needs his own bathroom eventually. Michael needs office space. We cannot keep sacrificing our future because nobody wants difficult conversations. Nobody. Another word meant to erase me while pretending not to. I slowly nodded, letting every word settle into place. Then I noticed something small near the staircase. A cardboard box filled with framed family photographs. My photographs. Pictures of Richard. Pictures from Noah's birthdays. Christmas mornings. Summer vacations. Already packed away before I even arrived. That was the moment I realized this had never been a conversation. It had been an eviction disguised as Thanksgiving dinner. I kept staring at the cardboard box near the staircase while the room around me faded into a dull blur of uncomfortable silence. Framed photographs leaned against one another inside it. Richard holding Noah at the county fair when he was 3 years old. Our family Christmas portrait from 5 winters ago. A photograph of Michael in his high school graduation gown with my arm around him and tears in my eyes because his father and I had worked so hard to get him there. Packed away already. Removed before the conversation even happened. Jennifer followed my gaze and immediately looked irritated that I had noticed the box. We were trying to organize things ahead of time, she said defensively. I nodded slowly. Clearly. Noah walked toward the box before anyone could stop him. He picked up the graduation picture carefully and frowned. Why would you pack Grandpa's pictures? Jennifer moved quickly this time. Noah, put that down. But it belongs downstairs. Her smile vanished completely. I said put it down. The sharpness in her voice startled him enough that he obeyed immediately. Michael stepped between them awkwardly. Everybody just needs to calm down. I finally looked directly at my son again. Did you help pack Richard's photographs? He swallowed hard before answering. Mom, please do not do this tonight. That was all the confirmation I needed. Jennifer sighed dramatically like she was the victim of a long, exhausting day. Honestly, Evelyn, this is exactly why we avoided having this conversation sooner. Everything becomes emotional. Emotional. I almost wanted to ask her what she thought eviction from your own family was supposed to feel like. Convenient? Professional? Noah looked at his father with wide, uncertain eyes. Dad, are Grandma's things not supposed to stay here anymore? Michael hesitated too long. That hesitation told the truth before his words ever did. We just think it is time for Grandma to have a place of her own again. Noah frowned harder. This is her place. The room went silent once more. Even Jennifer looked caught off guard by how quickly and simply a 10-year-old could expose the ugliness adults spent hours dressing up with polite language. Michael rubbed the back of his neck nervously. Buddy, things are more complicated than that. No, they are not. Noah's voice sounded smaller now but firmer too. Grandma lives here. She makes pancakes on Saturdays. She watches movies with me when I am sick. She helped me build the treehouse. His eyes moved toward the suitcases again. Why are you acting like she is not part of the family anymore? Jennifer looked away first. That tiny movement told me more than words ever could. Because deep down she knew exactly what this looked like. Not responsibility. Not practicality. Cruelty. And the worst part was realizing how long this plan had probably been growing quietly behind smiles and holiday dinners. While I folded laundry upstairs. While I cooked dinners. While I babysat Noah so they could vacation in Florida last summer. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped seeing me as Michael's mother and started seeing me as an obstacle standing in the way of the life they wanted. The house felt smaller now, even with everyone standing perfectly still. Nobody wanted to look directly at me anymore. My relatives stared into drinks, adjusted napkins, pretended to check their phones. Cowardice spreads quietly through a room when people decide comfort matters more than decency. Noah still remained beside me, his face pale and confused. I squeezed his hand gently before letting go. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "why do not you go sit in the living room for a minute? I do not want to leave you." That nearly shattered what little composure I still had. Jennifer let out another impatient breath. "Noah, listen to your grandmother." He hesitated before finally walking slowly toward the couch, though he kept turning back every few steps like he was afraid I might disappear if he stopped watching me. The moment he was out of earshot, Jennifer lowered her voice. "We never wanted him involved in this." I stared at her calmly. "Then perhaps you should not have packed my life into suitcases before Thanksgiving dinner." Michael stepped forward again, clearly desperate for the situation to end. "Mom, we can still handle this respectfully." Respectfully? That word almost sounded insulting now. I glanced toward the dining room where my missing chair should have been. "You removed my seat from the family table before you even spoke to me." Michael opened his mouth but had no answer for that, because there was none. Jennifer folded her arms again. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." I looked at her carefully. Harder for who? She hesitated just long enough for honesty to slip through her expression. "For everyone." There it was again. Everyone except me. I slowly bent down beside my suitcases and unzipped the smaller one. Michael immediately looked confused. "Mom, what are you doing?" I reached calmly beneath a folded sweater and pulled out a slim leather folder. The same dark brown folder Richard always insisted we keep important papers inside. I had noticed it sitting on my bedroom dresser earlier that afternoon before leaving for dinner, and slipped it into my bag out of habit more than intention. Funny how instincts work sometimes. Jennifer's eyes narrowed slightly as I stood back up holding it. "What is that?" she asked. I ignored her question and opened the folder carefully. Mortgage statements, insurance records, tax documents. Quiet little pieces of paper carrying truths nobody in this hallway seemed to remember anymore. Michael looked suddenly nervous. "Mom." I pulled out one specific document and held it gently between my fingers. "You know," I said softly, "your father always worried about making sure this house stayed protected no matter what happened to him." Jennifer's expression changed almost immediately. Small, subtle, but noticeable. "What does that mean?" she asked carefully. I looked directly at my son this time. "It means Richard never removed my name from the deed." The silence that followed felt completely different from the earlier silences that night. Before, the room carried discomfort. Now it carried fear. Michael's face drained of color almost instantly. Jennifer blinked twice like she had misheard me. And for the first time all evening, I realized they had made one very dangerous assumption. They believed I had nowhere else to go because they believed this house fully belonged to them. Jennifer stared at me without blinking. For the first time that night, the confidence had disappeared from her face completely. "What do you mean your name is still on the deed?" she asked carefully. I slid the document back into the folder with slow, deliberate movements. "Exactly what I said." Michael looked genuinely shaken now. "Mom, I thought after Dad passed, everything transferred automatically." "No," I replied quietly. "Your father made sure it did not." The room had changed entirely. A few minutes earlier, they had looked at me like an unwanted guest who no longer belonged there. Now suddenly nobody seemed sure where they were standing anymore. Jennifer recovered first. She crossed her arms tightly and forced a cold little smile. "Well, regardless of paperwork, this is still our home." I looked around slowly at the vaulted ceilings, the stone fireplace, the hardwood floors Richard and I had helped pay for during the hardest years of Michael's life. "Interesting choice of words," I said softly. Michael stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. "Mom, why are you bringing this up now?" I met his eyes calmly. "Because you packed my suitcases before speaking to me." His face twisted with guilt. Jennifer immediately interrupted. "We were trying to handle this maturely." "Maturely?" I repeated. "You removed my photographs from the walls before Thanksgiving dinner." Her jaw tightened again. "You are making us sound cruel." Noah suddenly appeared again near the hallway entrance. None of us had noticed him listening. "Maybe because you are being cruel." The room froze completely. Jennifer looked stunned. Excuse me. Noah's face was pale, but he did not back down. Grandma helped raise me. She lives here. And you packed her stuff like she was not even coming back. Michael looked horrified. Noah, that is enough. No, his voice shook now, but he kept going. You guys are acting mean. I felt tears sting my eyes for the first time all evening, not because of Michael or Jennifer, but because a 10-year-old child was showing more courage than every adult in that house combined. Jennifer turned toward Noah with visible frustration. You do not understand adult situations. I understand you made Grandma cry. The silence after that sentence felt unbearable, because it was true. Even though I had not let the tears fall, children always know. Michael finally looked at his son instead of avoiding him. Buddy, nobody is trying to hurt Grandma. Noah frowned. Then why does everybody look scared now? Nobody answered him because everybody knew exactly why. The power in the room had shifted. Jennifer glanced nervously toward the leather folder still in my hands. Michael suddenly looked less like a homeowner and more like a little boy realizing he had made a terrible mistake. I closed the folder calmly and held it against my chest. Richard believed family should never make someone feel disposable, I said quietly. That is why he protected me before he died. Jennifer swallowed hard. Protected you from what? I looked directly at her. Perhaps he understood people better than I did. Noah walked directly toward me before either of his parents could stop him. Then he wrapped both arms around my waist so tightly that the leather folder pressed awkwardly between us. You are not disposable, he whispered. The entire room went silent again. I closed my eyes for one brief second and rested my hand gently against the back of his head. Out of everyone standing in that house, only one person still understood what family actually meant. Jennifer looked deeply uncomfortable now, not angry anymore but exposed. Like the image she carefully built all evening had cracked beyond repair. Michael stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I slowly pulled away from Noah and smiled softly at him. Thank you, sweetheart. His eyes were red. You can stay in my room, he said again. I do not care if it gets crowded. Jennifer inhaled sharply. Noah, enough. But her voice sounded weaker this time. Noah turned toward his parents with tears running down his cheeks now. Why are you doing this to her? Michael finally looked up. Buddy, it is complicated. No, it is not. His voice shook harder. Grandma loved us. That sentence hit the room like a confession nobody wanted to hear out loud. Because love had never been the issue tonight. Convenience was. Jennifer rubbed her temples in frustration. We are trying to build a future for this family. I looked at her calmly. And you believed removing me was part of that future. She did not answer. She did not have to. I carefully placed the folder back inside my suitcase and zipped it closed. The sound seemed strangely loud in the hallway. Michael immediately stepped forward. Mom, wait. I looked at him quietly. For what? His mouth opened but no words came out. Maybe because there was no version of this night he could repair anymore. Some moments permanently change the way people see one another. This was one of them. I reached for the handle of the larger suitcase. Noah instantly grabbed the second one before I could stop him. I will help you, he said firmly. Jennifer looked horrified. Noah, put that down right now. No, it was the first time I had ever heard him speak to his mother that way. Not cruelly. Just honestly. Michael looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. The relatives near the dining room had gone completely silent now, watching the collapse of a family they had politely ignored all evening. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders and walked slowly toward the front door. Snow drifted softly outside beneath the porch light. Behind me nobody moved. Nobody apologized. Nobody asked me to stay. And somehow that hurt less than I expected now. Because the truth had already settled fully inside my chest. I had not lost my family tonight. I had simply discovered who among them still possessed a heart worth trusting. Before stepping outside, I turned back one final time and looked directly at Michael. Your father spent his entire life teaching you that family protects one another, I said quietly. I hope someday Noah forgets what he learned from you tonight. 3 months later, I sat beside the window of my small apartment overlooking a frozen pond just outside Dublin, Ohio, holding a mug of coffee while early snow covered the sidewalks below. The apartment was quieter than the old house, smaller too. But peace has a strange way of making even unfamiliar places feel warm eventually. I had chosen this apartment myself 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Not because I was forced into it, but because I refused to spend another day living inside a home where love had become conditional. The first few weeks after I left, Michael called constantly, sometimes twice a day. His voice always sounded tired, strained, uncertain. Jennifer never called at all. I think pride kept her silent. Or maybe embarrassment. Because the truth about the house had changed everything. Michael had genuinely believed ownership transferred entirely to him after Richard died. But Richard had protected me exactly the way he promised he would years earlier during one quiet conversation neither of us ever expected to matter so much. Without my signature, refinancing the house became impossible. Selling it became complicated. And suddenly the woman they treated like a burden became the person holding their future together. But none of that hurt them as much as Noah's disappointment did. According to Michael, Thanksgiving night changed something in him permanently. He stopped laughing as much. Started arguing with Jennifer more often. Refused to let them remove my remaining photographs from the house. Children may forgive many things as they grow older, but they never fully forget the moment adults fail morally right in front of them. Then one Sunday afternoon in February my phone rang while I was folding laundry. Noah's name flashed across the screen. I answered immediately. Hey sweetheart. Grandma. His small voice sounded nervous. Can I ask you something? Always. There was a brief silence before he spoke again. Did you leave because of me? My chest tightened instantly. Oh honey, no. Never. Dad says things got complicated. I closed my eyes for a moment. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt people without meaning to understand the damage. Are you still sad? I looked around my quiet apartment. At the bookshelves I arranged myself. The little lamp beside my chair. Richard's framed photograph sitting peacefully near the window. Not as sad as I was that night. Another small silence passed between us. Then Noah spoke softly. I miss you. Tears finally filled my eyes again. But this time they felt different. Cleaner somehow. I miss you too. Can we have Thanksgiving together next year? He asked carefully. Even if it is just us? I smiled through tears while snow drifted softly outside my window. I would like that very much. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time thinking about family. Real family is not measured by who shares your house or your last name. It is measured by who still sees your worth when you are no longer useful to them. And strangely enough, the only person who truly saw me clearly that Thanksgiving night was the smallest person in the entire house.